and they're like, okay, don't know where you are, don't know where you went, do not come back. They have crashed your house. They're searching for you. They're at the school. They're there to pick up your kids. They're asking your friends where you are. Do not come back. Like they came in to seize. And I started getting phone calls and texts from the social services saying, Jake Freeman, where are you? We need to meet with you and your children. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, we're in America. And they're like, well, when are you coming back? We need to see your children. And I was like, we're never coming back. We are never coming back. And the guy was like, wait, you left Sweden? You're not allowed to do that. And I'm like, suck it, baby. Like, we're in America. You know, like, land of the free, home of the brave.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast, where the truth will set you free.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast. Joining me today is longtime friend of the show, the people's therapist, Jake Freeman. Welcome, Jake.
Hey, how you doing, Ryan? It's always a pleasure.
Just to remind our audience, the people's therapist is never controversial, so if you don't like anything he says, it's a problem with you and not him.
That's exactly what I tell people. I'm fixing you. I'm not fixing me.
So from what I hear, the entire nation of Sweden is against you, and your response is you're going to need some more allies to make this a fair fight.
They will, yes, but no.
So walk me through the beginning of this story. What happened?
Okay, so in a former life, I was in the human resources or human capital management professional. Worked with Amazon in the U.S. for years, and then it turns out I was one of the only, middle senior human resources personnel in Amazon that it was actually fluent in Swedish. All men have secret skills; they just don't tell you about them. Mine was that it was fluent in Swedish, and so they opened up a role over there because Amazon had difficulty finding a human resources professional, like manager, with the international expertise, fluent in Swedish, fluent in English, that could help consult and build out the platform or I guess personnel framework within Sweden, right? And so I applied for it internally. I got accepted. We moved out there in approximately September of 2017. And it started off great because I had lived in Sweden years before, about 15 years before, and everything was just swell. The country had moved, changed quite a bit because of the immigration deal.
Mm.
There was a lot more social anxiety surrounding immigrants over there then.
And their immigrants are predominantly Muslim, is that right?
Yeah, Muslim and African.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where the anxiety was there, but you couldn't address directly the anxiety surrounding these, people walking around in the dish dashes and the burqas and things like that. You couldn't address those types of Muslims. However, immigrants coming from Donald Trumpistan, they were dangerous. They were vicious animals. We had just initially, by and large, everybody's very friendly, but people would find out we came from the US and they would just say, like Stepford wife type eyes, aren't you glad to be away from that fascist Trump? And we're like, no fascism going on. I mean, he's not, and they would be like, NPC eyes, like, aren't you glad to be in a place where you can actually have health care? And we're like, we didn't have any problems at all with healthcare in the US. I mean, we had great Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you'd call into the doctor and you'd be in the next week, and heidi ho, let's go. And though we learned pretty quick that there was a certain subset of Swedish true believer that had an idea of how the US was, a fantasy belief, from propaganda that you could not dissuade them, and it just wasn't worth arguing with them because they would ultimately become really angry, um, and see you as crazy. So it's like, oh hey, yeah, great to be here, glad to be here, love the kebab rules, and move on with your life. Most people though were just great. So I'm trying not to talk so much. You know how I do.
Yeah, so I do have a question. You use the term true believer, and I love that term. I don't know if you're borrowing from Eric Hoffer, but I apply that a lot in the U.S., where it's like some people are devout, woke, or social justice, whatever you say, and then some people it's like they're kind of going along with it, to fit in. Do you see the
Yeah.
difference there in Sweden as well?
Well, yeah, the true believer application I use is ultimately from this
Here's a
guy
good
Jay
one.
Lifton,
Yeah,
did all the studies on how the Chinese basically industrialized brainwashing
yeah.
for their communist movement. uh Ideological thought reform, they called it. We kind of translated over here to brainwashing, but you get these people that they not only know, rather, most people know it's kind of a farce, it's just a political movement, it's something forced upon them, and the truth is most people will go with the reins of power kind of neutrally, either to the left or the right. Like, most Americans right now, you've got the Trump administration doing what it's doing, you have the Biden administration doing what it's doing. Most people kind of just go along with it because they've got their day-to-day life, right? They're not going to be fanatical. You've got some on the fringes that it's like, we will fight to the death against this, or we will fight to the death for this. You saw it in both administrations. Like, Biden can be standing up there on stage crapping his pants, and some people like, that was the greatest speech. This is the most resilient, sentient president we've ever had. And it's like, what are you talking about? Same thing with Trump. It's like, hey, we should get out of the World Health Organization. And they're like, oh my God, it's literally Hitler. Like, it's the Holocaust. And it's like, no, no, it's just we're getting out of who. Uh, in Sweden, same thing. Most people are going along to get along because what are you going to do? You can't leave necessarily. And if you leave, where are you going to go? So most people go along with it. But my God, you have some that were, for us, it was primarily left leaning women, that saw me specifically, as a former Marine combat vet, as like an existential threat. Therefore, my wife was a put upon victim of a patriarchal structure, and my kids were hapless, doopy uh, uh, cult members in the Jake Freeman Marine Corps military capitalist cult. And anything they could do to save us from our stupid selves was what they were going to do.
Did they
So,
have any evidence of like child abuse? Like what was their? I'm trying to remember their like what's their case?
the case was, they never came out with child abuse. It was that they were unusual, that they didn't fit in culturally. And that was enough for the Swedish social services to
Where
really
do you
start
think that?
digging in.
Where do you think your kids might have gotten this not fitting in? I don't understand.
Oh, they grew up American. Look, my family's saying we've got a motto on the wall, right? Speak your mind, but ride a fast horse.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. See, and it's just we have a long, long line of people all the way back to like 1617 Jamestown, uh, who were involved in settling the frontier, being rowdy, getting along better with Indians than they did with the white, the main cities. I'm at a frontier. Like, I got nowhere else to go. I can't go out in the frontier anymore. So here I am, frontiering with the great Ryan Rogers. Um,
The
but
podcast frontier.
the intellectual frontier, my friend.
Yeah.
So uh it was like this. Like, it the troubles really started for us when we moved into this little community in the northern part of Stockholm at first. Um and it was more immigrant friendly. It was more, I guess, it was more diverse, um, and more middle class, more blue collar. And like we loved it. Like we were, we would, throughout the summer we would walk on these, they had these wonderful walking and hiking trails. Like you find in a lot of major American cities where you know how they've it's like they've converted the train tracks into like biking paths and walking trails, and then they'll go through the forest, kind of like that, right? So as a family, we're always I mean, you can tell there's some athleticism here. And so my wife and I too were like very we're very psychosomatic in the way we live. Um so we would be walking, and my knucklehead 7-year-old boy at the time, he would see these like Swedish high school students like running for exercise or for fitness. And one day they were just doing their legs or whatever, and they would run past us, and all of a sudden this little boy like takes off on a sprint. And imagine this, you're Ryan running with all your friends, and all of a sudden some little 7-year-old comes beelining it and runs like between your legs, like sidewindering through all your legs, yelling, "I'm a little midget! I'm a little midget! I'm a little midget!" And that's just Manus's personality, right? And they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" And they thought it was hilarious, and they were like, "This is great." And so they stopped and talked to us. We're like, "Yeah, we're Americans." They're like, "Oh gosh, we love America. We're Swedes." Like, "Yeah, we know you're here. You're like Swedish. We're anyway." And they were impressed that I knew the language, and so pretty soon they're like in that local community, they're referring to my son Manus, midget guy, as little man. Like we just walk, it's like, "Hey, it's little man," and we're like, "Okay, locals know my kid. They don't know me. This is okay." Well, then we moved to this neighborhood in the southern part of Stockholm called Saltsjöbaden. And that's like God, it's like moving to the most posh, like Connecticut Ivy League neighborhood you can find. Old money, like very, very old money. And it was a huge mistake for us and our family, because the same sort of antics that made Manus very popular in uh Daybury, I whatever American town, like whatever made him popular or well liked in the little normal people town in Saltkrabaden, it was like, what is he doing? Like, that child is not acting right, kind of thing. So we we're moving in. We moved down to Saltkrabaden because we're in temporary housing up in the north, and then we got a what we thought was going to be a permanent house until the homeowners came back from Asia, because it was a rental for us. We're unpacking the packing truck, and all the kids are supposed to be helping. Well, Manus is excited, so he runs out, and this is like almost a year later. It's like I want to say November-ish. Uh,
What year?
runs out there, no shoes on, just pants on, no shirt on, and runs out and starts like knocking on neighbors' doors. Are there kids here? Are there friends here? Like, boy, like I told you, the Swedes are kind of like, they're a bit held back, a bit introverted. So he's knocking on doors, and the people are like, "What in the world are we seeing here?" And he finally finds a bunch of kids jumping on a trampoline, and so he just climbs up and starts jumping on the trampoline with these other kids. And so the mother in that house uh, finds like, here's this extra kid voice that's not in Swedish, is American, and goes out there. It's like, what in the world is this? Well, by about this time, probably about 10 minutes goes by, and I'm like, wait a minute, something doesn't sound right here. Where's that boy? Because he's that boy, right? And so I'm like, all right, everybody, all hands on deck. We got to go find this kid. Where the hell did he go? So we go around, and we finally find him on this trampoline. And the Swedish mother is like, this is very unusual. This child has come over and he didn't have an invitation. And I don't know you and you don't know me. And I've never gotten a phone call. And I'm like, I get it. This is, boy, I told you, don't be doing these things. So I thought that would end it, right? No, 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 no. Several days later, he just sneaks back. And I already told him, like, look, it's not like in America where when you meet random set of kids, friends, you could just go like knock on their door. Here in Sweden, they want to make an appointment to have an appointment, right? very much so. It's like the parents would call the other parents and they would set up a time to call again to confirm that we can come over and we're going to do this by the book, right? So he runs over there again. And the mother's like, nope, this is very unusual. We need your parents to call me and blah, blah, blah. Because I had her number, right? Phone number on my phone. This boy, he's like, well, I don't know your phone number. And she says, okay, well, let me tell it to you. It's blah, 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 070, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I'm not going to remember that. And she's like, yes, you are. It is blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I'm not going to remember that. And she says, you can remember it. Just listen. Blah, 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 blah. And he says, no, I can't remember because my mom bounces my head off the ground like a basketball. And she's like, oh my goodness, what is this? So she immediately, now, if I had a kid show up, and we've had random kids show up to our house when we're in a neighborhood. We're like, who are you? So, oh, I live over there with Rick or whatever. In my world, in our world, you take that kid and you're like, all right, we're going to go meet the parents again. Go knock on their door and say, hey, what's up with your kid? Like, what's going on here? Is there something weird going on? No. She immediately calls the social services, child protective services, basically, and says, there's a report of a child being bounced off the ground like a basketball. And of course, they're like, oh, this is very serious indeed. Of course, is being bounced off the head or off the ground like a basketball. So they come over. I have no idea this happens because he just comes right back. Doesn't tell us because I'm usually at work in Maine, Stockholm. And so they show up with a social worker and a police person, police sergeant or whatever. Knock on the door. 2 uniformed people are there. And I'm like, oh, good God, what is this? And they tell us, we're here for reports that you're bouncing kids' heads off the ground like a basketball. Not me, my wife, by the way. And so, and his brothers, wife and brothers are all bouncing his head like, yeah. And so they ask us, there's reports of kids being used as sports equipment. And I'm like, what in the world? And so I call him over and I'm like, boy, what is this? Like, why are the police here asking me about this? And he goes, oh, yeah, no, I just told her that because I didn't want her. I wanted her to give me a paper and a pen because I didn't want to remember that phone number. And I'm like, buddy, look, like, don't do this. Like, what are you doing? And they were actually pretty cool. They were like, okay, obviously this is a kid being a knucklehead. Well, what we didn't realize that was like strike one, right? And there is just in that culture within Sweden, within like the Stockholm upper, fancy set, there is just no place for the ADHD Dennis the Menace boy. Just none. And so that was target acquired 1 for us. So anyway, I've been going on and on again.
What year is this again?
This was 2017.
So you're refugees from Donald Trump's America, and they think
Yep.
these potentially fascist Americans are bouncing their kid's head off the ground with like basketballs.
Yes.
Where did things go from there?
Not kids, the one kid.
Just one.
We're all just doing Air Bud with Manus's head. So next one is we get them into public school there because the Swedish public schools had been pretty good, especially in an area like that. We tried to do the international school thing, but it was like a 18-month wait lists, and that was a big problem. That we as just expats building out an expat framework, because most expats coming from Seattle or London or Luxembourg or wherever else, they wanted to put their kids in international school. Like there was no interest in learning Swedish and being integrated with the society, which is what I wanted for my kids. I wanted the in-depth integration, and by God, we got it. Anyway, so we got into the public school thing, and it turned into mayhem for us quickly because my sons were at the time, if Manus was 7, then Atlas would have been 9, and then Silas would have been 11. About that, there's a 2-year separation. My wife and I are very methodical, like bolt action rifles, like kid out every 2 years, bam, for Trump's future, utopia that he's building. We need the children's. So they get in there, and they it takes them a while to learn that you walk in lines in silence. You don't yell. You don't like yell at each other like, "Hey, my brother." You certainly don't tackle each other on the playground when you see each other. By God. Because the one brother would see the other, and it was like wolves on bears. It was like, predatory coming in from behind and just go, because American football things, right? And so we started getting these phone calls like, "Hey, we need to talk to you about your children." And we're like, "Okay." So we would go up there, and they would be like, "Your children shout at each other across the playground." And we're like, "Okay." And they shout like, "Hello." And we're like, "Yeah, all right." And they're like, "Do you not see how unusual that is?" We didn't realize that in Swedish culture, this term unusual is basically like, it's that whole jantelagen thing that I explained to you. It's like, you cannot make yourself, or you must not make yourself unusual, out of the norm, out of the kind of cookie cutter that you're supposed to be. It's that
Th-
it's
th-
that very socialistic mindset
yeah.
that you get from like Ayn Rand's anthem of, you are not to think that you're better than anybody. You're
That
not to
that's
act.
that's so interesting because in America we have this idea like don't be mainstream, don't put yourself in the box, that kind of thing. But there's this
Yeah.
mindset in other countries. I think there's a saying in Japan like the tallest nail gets hammered down, like don't
Yep.
stand out, don't be different. Like in so many cultures there's that be like everyone else mentality that's so different in America.
Well, and then yeah, and in America, you get this the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like,
Yeah, yeah, true.
um and so um it it was a big culture shock, and I tried my very best to to get my boys to understand that it's a really different culture. Because I had successfully been in Sweden before. I had been in Afghanistan and picked up a lot of their stuff. Uh, we had been able to live all over the U.S. Every one of our kids was born in a different state. Uh, we had always been able to kind of get in where we fit in, but the culture shock here was very much misfits. I've got my list of the complaints that my boys were too competitive in games. They would act too competitive. I'm sorry, too competitive. They were sometimes tired in class, like Atlas especially would yawn. And that came down to like, there was like cartoons on the TV show, and he would like play his, not iPads, because we're a Android family. We're not disgusting Apple people. Um, and so and the teachers would say, "Why are you tired? Are you tired?" He's like, "Yeah, I was, doing whatever my studies were on tablets too late last night." And they're like, "Oh." The kids didn't wear sweaters. You'll never see me without a cardigan now, because I've been traumatized by Swedish family services about sweaters. But, you know,
Wait,
we had
not wearing
moved
a
from a
sweater is like an offensive thing?
well, all right. So we had moved from California. I was there with the Marine Corps, and then Amazon hired me up. I couldn't escape. But we weren't down in like low level California. We were up in the mountains
Mm.
near Big Bear. And so the weather up there is actually can be pretty frightful pretty quick. It gets really damn cold with a lot of snow, which is, happiness for me. So it was actually warmer in Sweden where we moved than it was from where we moved from. And so the kids were acclimated to warmer weather, right? So didn't wear sweaters, and the Swedish teachers would say, "You need to wear sweaters." Like, no, I don't. I'm warm. I'm fine. They sometimes spoke English, even after learning Swedish words. They took off their coats at recess during games when they were running around. Uh, they sometimes climbed trees after school in the forest. Like other kids, and teachers would see
Is
them
Sweden
like,
a real place?
dude, like you gotta. Have you ever been to those super super lefty places in America where the kids kind of just like walk around like they're all like SSRI'd? And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's almost like God, what's the term?
Tylenol
It's
brained.
like what's that?
Tylenol brained?
Yeah. It's like the parents like they didn't take the fun Tylenol, they took the boring Tylenol. But it's the designer children, the designer children thing.
Oh.
It was especially in that little area of Sweden, it was like the kids were so like immaculately hygiene with their haircuts and their bougie clothes and their like not a piece of dirt on them, no grass stains on their pants, and they were just like walking around like little future ambassadors. And you've got my kids running around with like a shoelace untied and a pant leg stuck into one sock, dirt everywhere because they never saw a puddle in Sweden that they didn't want to jump in. And they did, right? So they would uh hoot. Like literally they complained that our kids hooted each other when they were passing, like they would be walking and see one of their brothers in a class and like hoot at them, like hoot, and get everyone's attention. And it was like, what are you doing? That Atlas, the middle one, talked way too freely with adults in the school. That Silas, the oldest one, remained way too quiet. That Atlas would stand too close to the teachers, and then Silas would stand too far away. That they picked up ice sheets, like when it started freezing, they would pick up sheets of ice from puddles and then like blast them over their head like WWE, and be like,
Your kids
like
sound
snap into a
awesome.
swim gym, and the Swedes were like, "Oh my god, what am I seeing here? This can't be right."
Sweden sounds like
So
something out of a movie.
or just basic American kids. But yeah, no, the reaction was definitely a movie. That's why we keep using the Stepford wife analogy.
Yeah,
But
yeah. That's the
this one's
vibes.
funny. Look, we walked all over the place because you've got to know back in those great Swedish neighborhoods with their forest trails and things, like you can't walk through the forests without coming to an understanding of like how they came up with like gnomes and fairies and magical forests, because the forests are incredible. They're incredible. It's like Pacific Northwest but better kind of thing. So we walked everywhere, and we would go from our house to this grocery store way far away, uh, over to their school, to this, to that. It wasn't abnormal for us to put 5 or 6 miles on a family walk, pushing the little baby in her little, jogging stroller, and everybody else is just walking along. And so they ended up with a pretty good mental map of where everything was. So one day they missed the train, right? And decided instead of waiting like the 15 or 20 minutes to the next train, they wanted to walk home. And it was only a mile. And that was noted down as a big freaking deal that they walked home, right? Uh, because like the crime rate down there in that little town was non-existent. There's some areas of Sweden, like the more Islamic run ones, I wouldn't have my kids walking home. But it's an exaggeration to say the Islamic run ones. But there's some where there's so many Muslim immigrants that if they see a random weird white kid walking by, they're like, "Hey, let's start a fight. Let's start a kerfuffle." Not necessarily bullying, but it's a lot closer to what you might find in certain American towns, where if you see, hey weirdo, what are you doing? Like, what do you got in your pockets? That kind of thing. It's just that same kind of kerfuffly warrior culture, right? So a ball was kicked onto a roof, and Silas didn't want to wait for a teacher or somebody to come get it. So he just like monkeyed up a tree, like jumped over. It's only like an 8-foot roof, right? and kicks that ball off, and then there's like 20 more balls and frisbees and all kinds of stuff. And so he's up there looking like these the student aide that was there was like, he was like, that kid, I was amazed. This was one of the only positive things that we heard. He was like a 20-something-year-old male, and he was like, that kid climbed up that tree so expertly, he looked like a circus worker. And then he just was up there and he starts kicking all these balls off and throwing these frisbees off, and all the kids are like, yeah, like it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Great. And he was like, I was so impressed because he had no fear at any time. We can't get our kids, like their Swedish kids, to get out of their shell at all. And your kid, does he even have a shell? Now, that was positive from his perspective. The Swedish teacher women and then the social worker women, it was, well, it doesn't matter if he didn't get hurt. He could have got hurt. He needed to ask permission for his safety. And that was the whole mentality. It was, you must get the permission of the longhouse before you're allowed to do anything. And it's just, no, ma'am. Like, it's these kids, I'm never going to do that. They're going to never do that. If it's not like ontologically evil or against the law, I'm not asking your permission. Like, go have fun being upset about it, but I'm not going to comfort you. Right. So yeah, we got called into school. They literally gave us this list, this massive rundown. And Janet and I are looking at each other like, are you serious? Like, this is what you're calling us in for? Where we're having literal hand grenade attacks 15 miles away in the main subway system in Stockholm because of Chechnyan immigrants. Like, and we're worried about puddles? Like, what? They didn't think that we took this seriously enough. Because how can you, right? It's like, hey, we'll take this under advisement. And one of the teachers said to us that, and yeah, one of these teachers said to us, like, here's all these problems. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's pretty standard American kid behavior. I mean, if they're not like beating kids up and stealing their lunch money and causing a problem, then like, what's the problem? And they're like, well, can you force them to act more Swedish? Now, my wife, and again, by this time we had been there like 4 to 6 months, right? And my wife, and we knew from our, legal advisors going into Sweden that corporal punishment is like, you cannot do corporal punishment. Thou shalt not. It's just off the table. And so all you can do is basically permissive parenting. Please, mommy would like it if you did this instead of that. Can you please not do that? And we had worked with these teachers for weeks and weeks about getting our kids to, I don't know, wear damn coats on the way to school. And so this teacher says, well, can you force them to act more Swedish? And Janet says, well, what do you want us to do? Beat it into them? And she's like, oh no. Like, just trying to, and this was Janet's effort to just highlight how absurd this whole thing was. And that was the wrong thing to say, Ryan. My God, that was the wrong thing to say, because that ultimately started triggering them calling social services and complaining behind our backs that something just wasn't right, because they couldn't understand that our kids were just being American kids. In their minds, the only reason why kids would act the way they were was because there was severe abuse going on at home. That's it. That was the only solution. So
I was homeschooled as a kid, and pretty much like, it's like, as soon as you finish your schoolwork, just go climb trees and play in the dirt and jump in puddles. You know what I mean? That was my whole childhood.
yeah, and look how you turned out, man. We don't want that for Sweden. We want so no, same thing. And again, I really do think if we weren't in this upper set bougie area of Stockholm, if we were far outside of the city, where it is more rural and like real people, uh I think we would have had a different experience. Like basically, my Swedish experience made me like a capitalist, freedom loving fascist Maoist because
Maoist?
because I yeah, Maoist because I'm a big believer in the rural uprisings.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
The rural people are superior to the city people.
yeah,
Um, so in
that
that
was a
way, they've
Maoist
made a
thing.
Maoist
Yeah.
out of me. Thank you, Sweden. I've got a lot of concern for uh urban yuppies. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no other way to put it. It's just that yuppie culture. Um,
There's something about, I mean, I grew up pretty country, but I live in Austin, Texas now, and there's something, just a different mindset of people who, it's hard to explain, but just like how packed in you are, and the fact that there's like very little mindset of self-sufficiency, because you can't go hunt and farm, or like
no,
you can't do anything, so you have to kind of be in that like dependent mindset.
well, and then everybody's always watching each other. And even if it's not like America, it's like nobody's gonna call the law on you for climbing a tree, usually. Um, we do have this virulent strain of Karens in America that's increasingly like, lady, I gotta bear mace you, sorry. But um you do have the social judgment aspect in the cities where people will see you, and then at the local, I don't know, cocktail rubbing contest that they do, they'll be like, oh, did you see the Freeman's children? Yeah, so it's very unusual, wasn't it? It's a very similar thing. I think it's a lot more culturally socialized in Sweden. There's this I mentioned Jantelagen earlier, and for your listeners who haven't quite read my what I've written, the Yante law, or the law of Yante, was something a guy conceptualized in a book in the, I want to say, the 1930s, Danish dude. And it was his kind of how he saw and put to words the local culture in his local Danish village. And what you gotta love about a lot of Scandinavians is there can be quite a bit of self-criticism or cultural criticism, where sometimes they'll read something like, yeah, okay, got us, that kind of sucks. But the law of Yante is, you're not to think you're anything special. You are not to think you are as good as we are. You are not to think you are smarter than we are. You are not to imagine yourself better than we are. You're not to think you know more than we do. You're not to think you are more important than we are. You are not to think you are good at anything. You are not to laugh at us. You are not to think anyone cares about you. You are not to think you can teach us anything. And perhaps, don't you think we know a few things about you? And that Yante law is it. I mean, it's kind of a very similar structure to, the Harrison Bergeron thing. That Kurt Vonnegut book, the kind of a dystopian future of perfect equality,
Yeah.
or like I mentioned, Ayn Rand's Anthem, where all individuality is gone, even to the point where the word "I" is struck from the human consciousness until they
Mhm.
rediscover it. But it was a really useful set of laws to understand why these Swedes, and again, I have to say, we ran into very few problems with the men, and we ran into very few problems with the women. It was the certain subset of women in like teaching roles and or social services, kind of like the white liberal woman that you're seeing in America.
I'm
uh
seeing her.
oh yeah, you're seeing her. It's like live, love, Lexapro, but stay away from me. uh it's kind of that, where it's like there's this heightened state of neurosis going on, but which is okay. Let's quarantine it a bit, but by God, let's not deputize it and give it a badge. That's so bad for us. And then we do anyway, right? And so that's what kind of we were dealing with. Sorry, I took us on a bit of a cultural tangent here.
You're good. You're good. So where did this like witch hunt by the Swedes against your family? Where did that lead?
Okay. So unbeknownst to us, after that school meeting, they started just because we were obviously unreasonable, fascist Trumpian Americans. They started just calling these little nitnoid goofy complaints into the local social services. And so they started making a docket of what our horrible children were up to, and ipso facto, what we must have been doing as parents to them to make them this way. It could not be cultural. This was all, and this, Ryan, this was kind of my first experience with, uh, it's all trauma. Everything's trauma. Oh, that's your trauma speaking.
Mm.
They didn't frame it like that, per se, but what they did do is they interpreted everything my kids did, from untied shoelaces to not wearing coats to school, as evidence of them being traumatized at home, which it took me a long time. Like, I've never bragged that I'm a very intelligent person. I might be an expert, but not intelligent. So it took me a long time to put together what was happening here, right? It was in a new world. Well, all right, then we did a big boo-boo, big bozo no-no. So, um, because of my Marine Corps work, I had been active duty for a long time, and then I got into the reserves, and I got into something called uh, civil affairs group, which they do. The best way to describe civil affairs work is when the big blue offensive arrow of Marine Corps, we're gonna fuck it up, goes on a map. We realized back in World War II, and the Army really came up with it, there's a bunch of stuff, culturally speaking, historically speaking, that we don't want to blow up. Let's say in the World War II, during the European battles, what a tragedy would have been if we would have just like bombed the Parthenon into non-existence, or the Colosseum, or the Louvre, or whatever else, right? There's
Mm.
certain
Yeah.
things that we as the allies would have rather had on a map, like, hey, let's not blow this up, let's not blow this up, let's avoid this area, da, da, da. The Army did a wonderful job at that. And it's God, the Monuments Men. Have you ever seen this movie Monuments Men?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Yeah. Well, but you probably heard of it. And that's about the Army realizing, oh shit, well, we're going through wartime operations, we're losing a lot of European Western history under the taint treads of Hitler's machine, and the Americans and the British and the French and the French, and the Soviet. Um, the so we need to figure out how not to blow that stuff up, and if we can, collect it all up. So that kind of evolved uh, into the Marine Corps has its own civil affairs group, Army has theirs. It's also uh kind of it's a lot of it is hearts and minds adjacent. Like, hey, if we do have wartime operations, how do we keep the churches running? How do we keep the schools running? How do we keep the supermarkets filled? Not really our domain, but as the Marine Corps, but certainly we can help not destroy that, right?
Mm.
Because America has gotten so good at precision strikes on enemies that a lot of like we did in Venezuela. Like, Venezuela can operate day to day as the regular people because Maduro just got like hell lifted out of his suite. That's how good we are at this. Anyway, so I was we had gone to the Philippines with Operation Balakatan, and I had met a family that was like living in a bamboo hut. It was like 5 or 9 kids living under one roof. They're living on like $20 a week. Ultimately, we came to find out through our Filipino Army, like allies, advisors, whatever, that they were being targeted for human trafficking, right? The girls. Um, I've written about it elsewhere, so I won't get into the full story. But Janet and I ultimately decided, or we found out that uh, one of the ways the traffickers were targeting them was promising that, hey, if you come and do this for us, we ultimately will send you to college, right? which was not true at all. It was literally they wanted to get these little girls onto like a ship in international waters. It was basically a rape ship where dudes could fly in from all over the world and, come to these girls that were chained to beds and rape them into smithereens and then throw them over the side of the ocean, into the ocean once they got used up. It was one of the things we found that was going on there. And so I was like, well, shit, that ain't good. Janet and I ultimately decided that we were going to throw our hats in behind this girl. She was very smart and help her get into college. Now, it was like 100 or $200 a month is what it was going to cost us. And at the time, it was like, okay, let's afford it. So we did that. And that evolved into their house, this family's house, got eminent domained by the Filipino government because the Chinese were investing a bunch in their island because there was a deep sea port on the south of the island, deep sea port in the north. And there was a crappy dirt road connecting the two. It was only like 80 miles, but it was almost Jeep trails at times. So the Chinese were like, well, we want to use their southern port and their northern port. Let's make basically a 2-lane highway paved all the way through. And the amount of money and sudden traffic from industry that was coming through there, these jungle people had no idea what they were in for, right? So their house got eminent domain, which at first I was like, okay, well, the government will compensate you for your house and you can, go move somewhere else. No. Eminent domain doesn't work like that in the Philippines. It's more like, hey, get out. We're taking your house. And that's it. There's no financial compensation. It's just like, get out of here, yoo-hoos. And so I'm like, well, crap. Now we have all these, family and little girls out on the street again. What are we doing? And so I looked around we had been putting this girl through a bachelor's in civil engineering. So I told her she had 4 choices: no business degrees, no nursing degrees, because that's all Philippines has. What they did need was civil engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. So you can have any degree you want as long as it's an engineering degree. and we'll fund it. So we did. And so she went for civil engineering. I told her, okay, sweet. This is your first foreman project. Find me a good contractor to build a house and you will run it and I will fund it and blah, blah, blah. So she did. And it was about $15,000 to build an actual like cinder block house on a piece of property way off from the road. And she ran it. And of course, the whole time I was like, man, are they spending all this money on chickens and parties? Because Philippines is infamous for that. So I had her send me updates and pictures and like bills of sales and receipts, like you would a project manager, right? So they got to a point where they were about done, and I wanted to go do a site inspection myself because that's what you want to do. And I was like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we took the wife and kids and showed them this thing that our family has been basically funding for the longest time? And so we're like, yeah, it is. So I wrote a letter to the school, their local Swedish school, and said, hey, we want to take them for 2 weeks down there to show them this thing, once in a lifetime opportunity. I don't know how many more Filipino families I'm going to like sponsor like this, probably none. But just the way everything came down, this is where we are. We would like to take these our kids and show them what the other half looks like. And there's some severe anti-homeschooling laws in Sweden. Like they will literally seize your kids and take them over there. Yep. Oh, it's crazy, man. And I'm documenting that stuff in my essay, the legal stuff. And so they ultimately gave us written permission to do this. But my God, did it make them mad. I have no idea why they gave us permission to do it. But they did. And so we went, and they took all their homework from Sweden. And part of the deal was my kids were going to come back and basically do a field report of what it's like in the Philippines in this area, so it was going to be academic, right? So we went, great experience, great time. Everything worked out the way we wanted it to. We came back to 2 complaints in the mail. Because when we got permission from the school, the teachers, even though like the principal gave us permission. The teachers then went and flooded social services complaint line that we were kidnapping our kids to a foreign country for this thing. That's how weird the parent-child state relationship was, Ryan, is that you as a parent could be accused of getting between the state and the child. Not the other way around, right? So we came back to two of these oro on melons. It's like complaint letters or letters of complaint from social services accusing outrightly of suspicion of abuse and neglect, right? And we're like, what in the hell is this? And so I call up this social services lady, and if you have the local district attorney here or social services here have a complaint against you, they pretty well tell you, like, it relates to these things. We want to talk to you about these things. Not over there. It was just completely open-ended. And she actually said in a threat to me that the concerns, if substantiated, will result in the removal of our children. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? So I made a huge mistake by calling or looking around to find a lawyer. Because the guys I worked with in Amazon, a bunch of Swedes and a bunch of expats who had lived there for years, I thought the story with the teachers and everything else was pretty funny. Like, what is going on here? They got sullen quick. They're like, oh, hey, man, this is serious. Like, you need to take this serious. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, what are they going to do? A bunch of dumb teachers being mad that my kids don't wear, coats at school. I had no concept of how powerful, like overpowered the Swedish teacher to social services thing was. And so when this thing came down, I went back to work. I was like, hey, man, this is what happened. They're like, yep, that's where we figured it was going. You need a lawyer fast because they will come at you hard. They'll come at you fast. Everything will be one-sided. They will misrepresent your words. Now that you're a target, they will do everything they can to remove your kids from you. And I'm like, this is unreal. This is freaking unreal. So I start calling around and I finally find a human rights law firm out of Uppsala, and they agreed. They're like, yeah, we will take on this case like most Ricky Tick. Here's our retainer. So I paid him the retainer. I sent him the documents like, yep, this is very, very serious. And then the civil rights lawyers, these, basically not quite immigration lawyers, but there's human rights lawyers in Sweden whose entire firm is focused on protecting kids from the state. Like, I've never heard of that type of lawyer here, right? You have immigration lawyers, you do have civil rights lawyers, blah, blah, blah. So my lawyers then send a letter to the social services saying, hey, we're representing the Freemans. Anything you've got, send it to us. We will be representing our clients' interests. Don't meet with them without meeting with us. And that was all the evidence the social services needed to know that we had not only things to hide, but that we were absolutely guilty. And now these social services Karens were saving our children from certain death. Like, it's not in America, in the US, or, British common law type of framework, you have the right to be represented in court. And you'll see from the comments on X and then on my Substack from Swedes saying, no, you do not have the right or need for an attorney. The state will represent your interests. And if the state decides you're guilty, well, then you're guilty. But you can also, what do they say? You can appeal it at a higher court if they find you guilty. So that's what you should have done. And it's like, are you insane? I'm not putting my kids and myself at the mercy of these lunatics. Like, I'm not doing this. Your social utopia, great. I'm not doing this. Like, God. So it escalated rapidly, to where my lawyers, they reached out to the social services and said, okay, what are the complaints exactly? And the social services wouldn't say, wouldn't tell them. And And so suddenly everything starts dying down. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, is it one of those things where it was a bullshit case? And once you lawyer up, they're like, ah, damn it. The easy one is now gone. We're not going to pursue this anymore. No, 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 no. They were still working behind our backs, and our kids started coming home from school extremely like downtrodden, and then begging, asking to go back to America. Like, hey, can we go back to the States? We don't like it here. And I thought this was homesickness. This will happen, right? You move somewhere, it's exciting, and then it's not exciting, and everything's yulby and lame, and you want to go home. And it's like, you got to power through it. So I was like, no, 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 no. But then I was like, you know what, guys, what's going on? Why suddenly the change of heart? And they wouldn't tell us. And then finally, like, broke into tears. My oldest boy told me, every day I go to school, I go into class, and one of the teachers comes to the door and says, Silas Freeman. And he has to get up and go. And he gets put in a room with 5 or 6 other teachers and a social worker. And he said they would interrogate him sometimes up to 4 hours. All of them asking the same questions. Are you safe at home? Are you scared of your father? Is your mother hurting you? Do you want to be taken away from them? Do you want to live with another family? Like, in every different direction they can. And he doesn't have any representation there. And he's scared because they keep telling him, like frickin' child predators, don't tell your parents about this or there will be a lot of trouble. And so I didn't know about this. My lawyers don't know about this. So finally, when I find out, I am livid. So I get a hold of my lawyers. I'm like, look, you guys got to put a stop to this. There's got to be some sort of violations within, Swedish law. And they said, yeah, there is. Like, once you retain counsel, they're supposed to go through counsel, right? But and you'll see this in the lawyer documents that they send me. They said the Swedish social services do not even follow their own laws. They do whatever they wish uh, to get the end results that they want. So my lawyers then, sent them a firm like, hey, this is a huge problem. This is an ethical breach. Stop it. You've got to stop harassing the Freeman's children. Uh, here's a scheduled meeting. Bring all the evidence and things you have. And if you don't have anything, drop the case, right? It's either prosecute or drop the case. And so they agreed to the meeting. And then the day of the meeting, the head social service woman canceled. And my lawyers reached out and said, "Oh, hey, they canceled and said they don't have their documentation prepared. So we're going to reschedule." What we didn't know, what none of us knew, is she canceled the meeting specifically so that our lawyers wouldn't come down to our city. They stayed up in Uppsala, and then she beelined it over to the school and did a hard interrogation of Manus, the youngest one, who was like 7 at the time. Behind closed doors, just her and him and another teacher, and just basically, put him in the thumb screws and interrogate him until he's bawling his eyes out, demanding that he confess that he's being abused at home. Like, not asking, demanding. And then sends me an email where she's like, proudly, well, I canceled the meeting with your lawyers, and I've interviewed Manus, and I am so concerned with his responses. He acts scared when he's talking to me, which is completely unusual for a child. And this is as much evidence as we need to know that there is something deeply wrong and concerning going on with your family. And it's like, you psychotic Stasi bitch. What is going on with you? So I let my lawyers know, and they were livid as well. So they made an official complaint to the general governing body over the social services, which was a joke. They asked me to make a similar complaint. I did. We have it all documented, to get at least her supervisor involved, so somebody can rein this crazy girl in. Because, like, Ryan, you and I are both mental health professionals. We've both seen when social services, God bless them, but when child protective services goes way high into the right on the balance that they're supposed to have for children, right? Well, yeah, this is what occurred. Uh and so we did all these complaints. We forced basically I don't even know what it's not quite district attorney, it's not quite county attorney, but there's a level of authority, like judicial authority, a civil authority over them, that said, hey guys, you're kind of making us look bad here. Do you have a case or not? And it ultimately came down to, Ryan, that they didn't. And so they allegedly dropped it. And they allegedly dropped it in writing. But what we didn't know, and what our lawyers didn't know, is they kept their investigations and their surveillance alive on us. And so by that time, the the actual homeowners of our place in Saltquabaden uh informed us that they were coming back from Asia. They were in like Indonesia or something for an expat thing. So we found a new place in a much smaller town, much further outside of Stockholm, called Brunn. It's in Ingara. So we moved over there, where we thought things were going on really well, until Manus started finding trouble in that school too. And he again with the tree climbing, again with the antics.
So the Swedes are cracking down on you guys. What's going on here at this point?
Okay, so we'd moved to Brunn. Everything's good. Like, we actually made some lifelong friends over there. I won't give you their names because I was warned later and saw later that it's like there's a severe guilt by association aspect to this form of European socialism, where it's like, if they can't get you, they'll try to punish and make life harder for the people around you. And I think that's a mechanism to isolate individuals so that people stay in line. It's almost North Korean in the way that if you become a dissident, if you know that you're what's that thing, the 3-generation rule, or
Yeah.
in North Korea, kind of similar to that. Like, your known associates and homies will be made to suffer. Anyway, so Brunn, just in terms of the pace, the natural beauty of it, everything worked out much better. It was far more blue collar, regular people than the other school, or the other community. And we got on pretty darn well, except young Manus. By God, he had this one teacher that, do you know those types of women, those types of ladies, that it's like everything they say, and their entire facade is like they're on the verge of tears at all times.
Yeah.
You know the type? It's like, you could ask them, like, man, what a beautiful day. And they're like, yeah, the sky looks really blue and the clouds are just really puffy. And I recognize that now as kind of the strange effects of SSRIs and barbiturates.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a huge amount of psychiatric drug use in Sweden, particularly SSRIs, and I'll get the
Interesting.
numbers for you on that later. But I think that also affects how and why some of these gals act kind of unhinged. Same thing that we're seeing in America right now. Like, why are you going to, like, what is it that's making you put yourself in this situation that no man in his right mind would put himself in, and with no sense of how badly this can go, or like how inappropriate this is? Like, anyway, so speaking of barbiturates and SSRIs, no, that's a cold Mucinex sort of thing. Tis
Wait,
the season for illness.
And your
What's
drink
that?
is Mucinex?
Oh, no. I just popped a Muci,
Oh,
and now I've got my Red Bull to wash it down.
nice.
It's Party Friday, fry yay.
Friday.
So we're going through the two older boys. They're I guess they're more survivable than the youngest boy. They're making friends, but they're keeping a low profile, man. Like they're keeping a low profile. Um, Manus, no survival sense whatsoever. He has learned nothing at this point. He goes in just both guns blazing in this little school. And the first big travesty that he brings to this poor teacher was finger foods.
That's not
Sweden
a thing in
is an
Sweden?
well, it kind of is, but not the same way it is for us. Like they do have like these little like sandwiches and things. But like you'll go into a restaurant very often and people will have, and this is kind of a European thing too. They'll have like a hamburger on a plate and they'll be like cutting it with a fork and knife, right?
Have you seen that Seinfeld? How do you eat your Snickers? With your hands?
Pretty much like it's so you know uh in yeah, it's odd. And Swedish true believers will come on my posts and be like, oh, you're so stupid, you're saying that nobody in Sweden eats their hamburgers with their hands. Of course we do that. And I'm like, yeah, and of course you also, there's a lot that don't, and that's just the thing. You break yourself into the types of people or communities that don't, and they look at you like you're weirdo, right? So freaking Manus here, like the Swedish school lunches, they didn't go through the Michelle Obama atrocities, so they actually had real food there, and one of which was olives. They had olives in the cafeteria. So Manus gets his olives and his little snack thing, and it doesn't take him long to realize he's a hijinks guy. He does things for the plot. And it doesn't take him long to realize like he can put him on his nose and be like a seal or a dog. And the other kids are like, ha, 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 ha. And so he ends up putting olives on his fingers. And the kids are like, what is this? Like, like Joe Rogan, like,
It's a witch.
And so, but this teacher, this one, she's gotta be like 40 something going on 50 something of just the puffy face, the all eyes always on the verge of tears with the red underneath. Like that type of very, very liberal woman. It's like
Oh, I know.
everything is emotionally terrifying. For some reason, this olive caper with this boy, this olive sleight of hand, it put her over the edge like I cannot describe to you. She called my wife crying on the phone. There's something deeply wrong with your child. I don't know what to do about it. I need your help. And she's like, oh no, what? Like, did he like grab a cat and like swing it around? Cause you hear about kids that do crazy things when you're not around and you're like, Jesus Christ, what's going on here? And she's like, he put olives on his fingers. God bless my wife, but she's not the type that bites her tongue when something's stupid. So she like donkey laughs at this lady, like, ah! like not laughing at her, but like just like like he what? Olives on his fingers, and you're calling me about that? And this woman is besides herself. Back into social services we go. And so we had the original social services complaints about stupid things in Saltholbaden, and now we have in a completely different city, town, jurisdiction, county, we're getting new complaints about stupid things. But the thing you've got to realize, it's how in America, like you've got that one crank in town that's always calling 911 or the local dispatch complaining about like, hey, the telephone poles, they look weird today. You need to come out and check it. And after a while, the sheriff's department's like, yeah, John, yeah, we know, like nobody's coming out, like take your meds. And ultimately they get ignored. Not in Sweden. They've got an obligation to investigate every single complaint. And here's the thing. The investigations the complainants are anonymous. You do not have the right to cross-examine your accuser. You don't even have the right to know who your accuser is. So what it's turned into, and again, this is something I we'll document as I go on here. It's turned into a really bitchy, passive aggressive way of social control, even within neighborhoods, where neighbors will call social services on each other anonymously just to stick it to them, as humans will do in a group when you have an ability to leverage an overpowered entity against your enemies and there's literally no blowback on you, right? This is going to happen. So one of the sad things about the Swedish system that I really, really wish they would reform. So, of course, Manus doesn't stop with this. This boy, he realizes pretty soon that in Sweden, uh, the buildings inside are pretty immaculate because you typically take your shoes off at the door, right? Because the winters are pretty wet, and so he realizes pretty quick that sock-footed, he's a ninja. Like, he's sitting in his desk, and all of a sudden he can be like, "Boop, boop," it'd be in another desk. And as his teacher's going through the lessons and calling kids out, my kids are a lot like me in class. Always have the greatest answers. Well, he thought it was funny to be over here, and the teacher would go to call him, and all of a sudden he's over there. So he's like, it's magic, you know? And this teacher's like this freaking kid. And so the one teacher, this adds to her knowledge that she's dealing with Hannibal Lecter. Now, there was a teacher's assistant there who absolutely loved this boy, loved his spirit. As Sweden has gone through some real changes since the 90s, I guess, from what other Swedes tell me, where it used to be a lot more freewheeling, a lot more just independent streak. And Sweden went through this golden era where you get ABBA, you get a VC, you get all those bands that came out of Sweden, all that great music
Oh, okay, yeah.
throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. God, what's the Roxette? Stuff like that. Like, you will look how much great art, music, and pop culture came out of Sweden during that era of kind of freedom was wild. Spotify, Swedish, Klarna, Swedish. It's like a unicorn maker in terms of billion-dollar businesses, which is fascinating for a pseudo-socialist country, where the capital gains, I'm sorry, not capital gains, but the corporate tax rate in Sweden is actually lower than it is in America.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So you as an individual, Ryan, you get taxed at like 40 something, like 46% of your income. The corporations are like 20%. So it's not the corporations actually funding the social welfare system, it's the individual. And that
Wow.
makes it really hard to get to rise up out of whatever social level you're in. But according to Jantelagin, you are not to think you can be anything. Right? So anyway, this one teacher's aide, like the assistant teacher, and when I say teacher's aide, you often think of like a, first year college girl helping out, or a college boy helping out in class. No. This is like a 30-something-year-old gal. It's basically like she's like the assistant professor, if you will, kind of a
Yeah.
different from one. She loves this boy. She sees no issues with his antics. She's a boy mom type of gal. So she ran a lot of interference for Manus. But freaking Manus, man, he couldn't take his little victories and keep them like in a happy level, a happy niveau. He then realizes he could sneak out of class with his little sock feet out of class, like out the door. Like, and he learned to do this mid-conversation. So the teacher would ask him a question, he would start answering it, the teacher would go on the board, start writing things, turn around, and he's gone. Because he thought that was funny as hell. Because what this teacher would do, I know this is the crying one. This teacher would then decide that he has either run into the woods to die or gotten kidnapped or something. And so she would get all the kids up out of class, and all the kids in the whole class would go and search all over the campus to find this boy. For him, the greatest thing ever. He has a classroom level game of hide and seek going on that he is the president of, and he is the one hiding. And this teacher could not get through her head that if she just would like ignore it or not reward it by taking action, it would ultimately kind of extinguish and flitter flatter out, or he would find new nutty ways to get her attention. And you can imagine this boy is not listening to Janet and I when it comes to, would you quit doing that, you 7-year-old, 8-year-old knucklehead? Like, stop it. He's like, no, this is great. I'm having the greatest time of my life. He's James Dean, rebel without a cause. So he goes out into recess one day, and there's a bunch of like, he's like 8, and there's a bunch of like 5 and 6-year-olds, and they're all at this big sandbox, and they're digging holes, and he starts like digging up like a dog, like dirt everywhere, and the little kids start laughing. So ultimately, this kid starts like throwing sand up into the air into his hair and being like, blah, 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 hair. And these little kids are laughing. And he like digs a hole and like sticks his head in the hole and like covers his head up like an ostrich. Again, this teacher calls my wife crying, saying that Manus is being horribly abused at school. He's being bullied. He's getting his head stuck in the sand. They're terrified for him. They don't know what to do. We're like, what in the hell? We didn't hear anything about this. Like, he would have said something, right? So we ultimately pull this boy in, and we're like, bud, what's going on? Are you getting beat up at school? Like kids are sticking your head? And he's like, no, I was sticking my head in the sand because the kids were laughing about it. This teacher could not understand it. And so when we explain that to her, she automatically goes from he's being abused at school by kindergartners to he's being abused at home because that's the only reason he's trying to hide from existence by burying his head in the sand. He's that sad. He wants to kill himself, like because of the abuse he must be experiencing at home.
The Freemans have broken the Swedish brain.
What's that?
The Freemans have broken the Swedish brain.
Yeah, man, unfortunately we did. So then we had some next door neighbors. We had a bunch of neighbors on this street. We get along really well with all of them, except for one family. They have a trampoline. We have a trampoline. This neighbor starts calling social services because our kids would go out when it would freshly snow, like an inch or something, and jump on the trampoline because the snow goes. You've seen kids do that. Maybe you've even done that. I used to do that. She thought that was so bizarre because it's snowing. Trampolines are for the summertime. You don't jump on the trampoline in the winter, especially when there's snow on. And they don't have sweaters. Back to sweaters. They didn't have strumpers on. They didn't have sweaters. And they didn't even have shoes. I'm sorry, strumpers are socks. They didn't have socks on. They didn't have sweaters on. So she did an anonymous complaint to social services. During the summertime, her kids and our kids would come over to each other's houses, and I had no idea she was making these complaints. They would put sprinklers under the trampolines and jump. Well, one day at their house, the kids didn't turn off the water. Her kids and our kids. And she called social services because her children would always turn off the water. If the water was not turned off, it was our children, the Freeman's children. So she called social services on our kids. Instead of coming over to our house and being like, hey, can you tell your little knuckleheads to turn off the damn water? And I've been like, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Boys, turn off the water. What are you doing? Like, come on. No, social service. This has to become a state issue. Wow. So, and now here's the funniest one. That house was gorgeous. We loved it, but it was like on a vortex or something because it was the most, in terms of grocery shopping, it was the most bizarre house we've ever lived in, where you would like go and buy produce and put it on the counter, and it was brand new, fresh produce. And the next day it was like wilting and rotting. Like it was starting to go bad. You would make a pot of stew. And then the next day you'd bring it back out and start cooking it, and it was already turning bad. It was like,
something about the house?
I don't know. What's that?
Something about the house?
Well, I don't know, man. I've heard tell that there's like magnetic line frequency vortexes that make food start rotting. I have no idea, but it was the strangest thing. It was
Could be the
just the
gnomes who
strangest
lived in the
thing.
forest.
Huh?
Could it be the gnomes who lived in the forest?
Hey, dude, look, there's a reason why Sweden is so magical, but we've never had that issue before, and we've never had that issue since. I've never had a house where food went bad so quickly as that place. Well, we live right there on the edge of the forest. And one day we had this massive pot of stew that had gone like just weird, right? And so Janet had told the kids, "Hey, take this outside and dump it in the trash can." Kids did not take it outside and dump it in the trash can. They took it outside, who knows why, and like ran with it deep into the forest and dumped it. Okay, not how I would do it, but how you did it. Well, we got a social services complaint that our children were vomiting in the forest, like covering the forest in vomit. Because I guess somebody walked back there on a like walking their dog or something and found this stew or smelt it and like, what is that smell? And what investigated, and it was like this giant slop of like rotten stew. And called social services that our children were vomiting in the forest. Like, blah. And we're like, what is this place? Like, why doesn't anybody go and knock on somebody's door and say, yo, are you dumping food in the forest? What are you doing? Don't do that. Like, we live here. And I would have agreed with them, right? Because we've always lived in kind of rural areas where you can like go dump something in a field when you don't want to deal with it. Like it's probably, I don't want to deal with 2-3 gallons of stew in a damn trash bin. It's terrible, right? But you can't dump it down the sink. So anyway, just weird stuff like that, Ryan, where it's like basic things that you and I would address to each other if we lived in the same neighborhood. No, boom, immediate call to social services. All right, back to that teacher. So this whole time we're getting all these signals up to social services that we have no idea about, right? But they're just like collecting. And the investigation, come to find out, the investigation is as much evidence as they need for the investigation. The fact that there's an investigation doesn't matter what the investigation's revealing. The fact that there was a complaint, the fact that there is an investigation gives the investigation its own life. It's kind of like what we saw with Trump and the Democrats. The fact that they wanted to move to impeach meant that the impeachment was necessary. That you remember that weird Soviet-esque logic. Yeah. So anyway, this poor teacher, Dr. Lexapro, was so beside herself because of young Manis that she demanded that he has a full psych eval. Like a full, like I'm talking a full psychiatrist, like the full 9 yards. And so we're like, yeah, man, like if there's a problem here, then let's settle it. And if there's not a problem here, I want it documented that you need to back the hell off, because olives on fingers, I'm not thinking that this means he's out of his mind. That he's the local jester making the kindergartners laugh by throwing sand on his head. I'm not terribly concerned about this, right? As long as he's not getting slammed in lockers. Well, he did something, prelude. He did something that made the teacher decide he was out of his mind and need the psych eval. He sneaks out of his class on his socks, all the way out her building, all the way across this asphalt, surface where they're doing like wall ball and like jumping jacks and whatever, all the way up into the main administrative building. Nobody sees this kid, right? Little sockless boy running all the way through, up the stairs, into the building, past all the administrator's office. Nobody notices him, into the teacher's lounge. And Ryan, I swear to God, into their refrigerator. He opens the refrigerator and he has an iPad that he took from class. He goes into the refrigerator, closes the door, and sits there in the refrigerator in the dark on this iPad. So by this time, the teacher starts deciding, all right, we got to go find this boy. So let's go find Manis. So they're all looking. Some poor Swedish man teacher is on his break, goes and opens up the door. This little boy jumps out with an iPad, little American boy yelling, iPad, iPad, iPad. kind of like I'm a little midget, back to that whole shtick, except hiding in this man's refrigerator and jumps out at him, scares the bejesus out of him. He ultimately thinks it's hilarious. He's like, who is this kid, right? Well, that makes it back to the teacher, and she decides, all right, that's it. This kid is nuts. This kid is just, he's psychotic. Like Kernberg theory, a personality organization is in full tilt. This kid's fucking nuts. So that's where the demand for the psych eval comes from. So they organize the psych eval. The psychiatrist comes through. He does the psych eval, and he comes back. We have a meeting with the principal, the teacher, the assistant teacher gal, and the shrink. And the shrink goes over and says, "This boy is nothing more than he's highly intelligent. He's not clinically ADHD, but he's very close. He's just on this side of the cutoff. But he is decided. The term he used, he is decidedly American. He is very, very, very
That's a
culturally
psychopathology.
American. What's that?
That's a psychopathology American.
Well, no, he was at this shrink. The Swedish shrink was actually really sympathetic towards Manus.
Oh.
He just said he's decidedly American. He doesn't think like a Swedish kid. He thinks like an American kid in terms of like psychosocial ways of being. You're gonna have kids that grow up in the Congo, grow up in America, grow up in Sweden. They're gonna act the way they act until they can adapt to whatever home culture they're in. But he said this kid is just acting like an American boy. He's a very common, normal American boy. And then he turned his guns on the teacher and said, "You need to get a grip. Like, you need to get yourself under control. Because he read all of her complaints and I guess talked to her several times, and he said her level of emotional distress about this child was so over the top that it reflects that she's the one that actually needs to get it together. She's the one that needs help." And dude, so this was happening in Swedish, and my Swedish was business good. It wasn't psychology good. It wasn't medical good. It wasn't like that level of Swedish good, but I'm picking up a lot. I'm like, oh my God, he is roasting her. He is giving her the business. And she starts panicking, like, no, you don't understand. He's crazy. I can't do this anymore. I can't deal with this child. Like, she's losing it. Like, the SSRI dosage needed to go up, like up. And he turns to the principal and says, "You've got a real problem on your hands. You need to get her under control." And the principal's like, because one of the other things, they had given this woman, a platform to talk after the shrink did. And then he turned to the assistant teacher and was like, "What are your thoughts?" And she said, "I have documented that I agree with you. I think he's a normal, very creative, fun boy." And another thing that had made this woman go nuts is we had watched at the time, there was this big, I don't know if it was popular in America, but it was in Europe, a big, like a Titanic serial. It's like a documentary, a Titanic documentary. And we had watched it, and Manus was just entranced with it. Well, so then he would watch this documentary, and then he would go to school the next day, and they would kind of have some sort of like creative writing, show and tell sort of, talking thing in class. And he would talk about the Titanic like he was there. Like he would tell stories like he was there, right? He's a storyteller. He gets that from his mom, probably. But anyway, so this woman, instead of being like, "Oh, this is a very creative boy who can do like first person storytelling," she decides that's further evidence that he's nuts. That he's putting himself so much in the spot of being in Titanic that he's fucking nuts, right? And so the main teacher and this assistant teacher just fundamentally disagreed that that's what's going on. And again, the bigger the main teacher, any sort of contradiction to the way she felt about it or saw things caused her to emotionally collapse. Because how's nobody seeing this? He's crazy. What do you mean that he's just telling stories about Titanic. He's telling it as though he's there. You don't see it either. Oh my God. That kind of thing. So anyway, I thought with the first social services thing being, kabushed with the lawyers, and then the psych exam thing being kabushed by the psychologist, that surely, certainly this would all end and we could go on our merry way. No, 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 no. The social services, I'm sorry, the teacher then turned. She realized if she's not going to get help from the school and the medical community, she was going to go all in with the social services thing. So she ramped up her complaints against Manis and Janet and I just to 10 about everything. And the same, evidently, the same woman who had run our case that was still watching us through the system in the former case picked up this case and was like, I'm going to get him now. It was like Dokes watching Dexter is like, I know there's something wrong with you. Like, she was after us. So she, they continued watching. They started having social services and police, uniformed police, start showing up to our kids' schools and start pulling them out of class and interviewing them. Now, at this point, our kids came to us. It was like immediate. We're like, hey, they're doing it again. Like, they're doing it again. I'm like, my God, what's wrong with this country? What's wrong with these people? And I don't think, Ryan, again, I don't think it was the country as the country. It's just the weaponization of certain lunatic cat women, like crazies, right? And if Sweden would just change it a little bit to like, you know what? Once we realize that you're just a crazy cat lady, we're not going to take everything you say seriously. That's it. That's all it would take. That's all it would take. They can just sit there like alone in their house for all I care. Just leave them out of the aperture of the state. So, one day, Atlas, my middle kid, they start asking him, or they start talking to him just in class. This wasn't anything like official with police or social services, what life is like in America. And he starts talking about, living in America, all the guns we would shoot and all the things we would do. And his super awesome Marine Corps dad. And his dad's like the scariest, coolest guy ever knows. And he went to Afghanistan and killed a bunch of people and came back and then went back to Afghanistan again and killed even more people. And he has all kinds of guns under his bed. Like in America, yeah, we kept a bunch of guns under the bed until we could get a big safe. But he told this story as like a 10-year-old would, just like all over the place. And so they're like, whoa, 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 guns under your bed, killing people, what? So automatically, boom, social services. Dude, Ryan, that's all they needed. That's all they needed. They came down full force, snatched Atlas up out of school, took him back to Stockholm to the main police department and loaded him with juice and cookies, let him marinate for about 30, 40 minutes, and then came in and was like, okay, tell us about your super crazy Marine Corps dad with all the guns and weapons under his bed. It's like, yeah, dude, my dad, blah, 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 and goes on again. And this doopy boy, he says to him, he's like, hey, he's sitting across from the police and social services. He's like, hey, don't tell social services about this or my dad's going to get really upset. So I get a call from the chief of police. I'm at work. I get a call from chief of police and she says, hey, is this Jake Freeman? Yes. Hey, we have your son at the police department in Stockholm. I'm like, oh my God, are you guys, is it all right? And she said, yeah, it's not him you need to worry about. It's yourself. We are looking at preferring charges for child abuse and gun crimes. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Says, yeah, your son has told us everything. So, we are holding your son. We're referring this case to the prosecutor and they will decide whether or not to charge you with child abuse, child endangerment, and weapons crimes. Now, at one point, they were talking something about like international war crimes, but that Yeah. Look, the Marine Corps is looked at as kind of a shock troopers, right? And so within the liberal mind of Sweden, if America is dangerous and America is scary and Trump is a fascist, the Marine Corps is a right-wing death cult, which it
Right.
is. But that doesn't mean, I mean, they can't prosecute me in the Hague. Anyway, that was very short-lived, but it was mentioned. And so I'm like, holy fuck. I'm like reeling at this point. I'm like, I should have left the country. We should have left the country. The gig is up. They've got our kids. Well, I don't know what happened within the Swedish police department, but several hours later, they actually called my wife and said, "Hey, we are returning your son to you for now. Um, I don't know if internal conversations, they're like, wait a minute, we just tried to build an entire case off of a sugar rush 10-year-old. Like, certainly somebody up in there in the Swedish government was like, guys, are you serious? Like, that's not what he's saying at all. I don't know. But they released the kid that night um to us. I called my lawyer and I'm like, guys, we got real problems. And they're like, holy shit, what? Even my lawyers are like, what is wrong with these people? Like, they really have it after you guys. And my lawyer in my correspondence that I'll post here on Article 4 rather, he said, you need to get your affairs in order. And if you can, get out of Sweden. Like, you need to get out of Sweden. Now, Sweden had also said, don't try to leave the country. And there's a bunch of case law where families would try to leave and social workers and cop cars would pull up on the tarmac in the main, Arlanda airport in Stockholm and stop the plane and snatch kids off the plane. And so it's like dude, it's like the opposite of America and ICE, where, and this is something shit libs like to say to me, is like, oh, so you had this experience in Sweden and you want everybody, all the immigrants in America, to have the same experience. It's like, no. If Sweden would have said, hey, we don't like you, get out of here, go home, okay, good, fine. But taking your kids away and putting them in foster care in Sweden and then sending the Americans either to jail or back home, no. Keep the families together, but go home, like, re-immigrate. Let's do it. I'm a fan. So anyway, Sweden had said, don't try to leave. We're watching you. We're gonna prefer these, we're gonna look at these charges and prosecute. Now, because we were trying to like get everything we could out of our international experience, there's a like overnight booze cruise line. It's like a 3-day cruise from Stockholm to the Eastern Bloc countries like Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. You can take, it's an overnight cruise. You spend a day or two over there and then you come back. Leave Friday, get back Sunday night. It was great, right? And so I was like, all right, I got to get my family out of here. Like, I got to get my family out of here. So but I knew that they had told us, don't try to leave the country. So through my lawyer, I said, hey, we had already, been planning. We've been going on these cruises. The kids are pretty stressed out. Wife and me are pretty stressed out. Can we do these cruises over to Eastern Bloc? And lawyer got with them like, hey, yeah, that's not a problem, but don't try to like leave. And we're like, okay, cool. Wow. So we went, no problems, came back, no problems. So that told me that within the European Union, they weren't border checking us. And so I started making the plans, like, my wife and I, we got to get out of this country. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but we got to get out of this country. Now, my wife she was very active in the gym then and now, personal trainer sort. She had some gym friends that actually were, God, how do I describe it without Americanizing it? It's like within the social services, you've got the social service workers, but then you've got like the families that they place them with. And it's a huge, lucrative industry over there. Kind of similar how it is here. You've heard about families. It's like they make their entire living by doing foster care. And
Oh,
it's,
wow. Okay.
oh, Oh, dude, look
Yeah.
into it. Like, especially like Arizona right now has huge scandal with how they've done their foster care system, where it became so lucrative that they're taking families from or kids from lower income homes and putting them with families that are higher income that want kids but didn't want to have kids or couldn't have kids. Yeah, the child protective thing is kind of gritty everywhere. It seems like, you know, more or less, depending on the state you're in. Montana actually seems pretty good from what I can tell. But anyway, some of her gym friends were on that social services side, and they saw that she was like super sad panda. She was super down. Like, hey, what's going on? And it's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I got to keep it kind of because we didn't know who we could trust, right? Like our Swedish friends that we knew were like, yeah, you're in big trouble, guys. You gotta like lay under the radar or go home or something. So she finally opened up to these guys like, "Hey, look, this is what's going on and I don't know what to do. I'm terrified. We love it here, but it doesn't love us here." And she said these two dudes went like just like energy down. They're like, "Look, I work with social services. I never told you that before, but I work on the family receiving side. They are planning to take your kids. If it's gotten this far, they're planning on taking your kids and you won't get them back." Which is the same thing my lawyer said. It's like you can appeal all the way up to the European Court of Human Rights and win and still not get your kids back.
Yeah.
Like case after case after case, um, uh, people have their kids seized and they get sent into the Swedish social services and they're just never seen again. Now, our three older kids, they would remember us. I would ultimately be able to track them down. But my youngest daughter, she was like 4 at the time, we would never see her again. Like, she wouldn't remember us. She might remember, like, glimpses, but she can't remember email addresses, phone numbers. I wouldn't be able to find her, right? So, Janet and I decided all at once, "All right, let's get the hell out of here." So, I had a bunch of, money stashed in America because the banking systems in Europe versus America very different. They don't really touch because this it's like that, the SWIFT ID type of thing. So we have accounts and routing numbers. They have accounts and SWIFT codes. So
Mm,
it's really tricky to get money to transfer back and forth without using kind of like a Forex type uh,
mm,
platform. So I had Swedish money and I had American money. So I through American accounts with American email addresses associated with American physical addresses, I bought a bunch of tickets, plane tickets from because they yeah plane tickets from Copenhagen, Denmark to Las Vegas because the cheapest tickets I could find about $10,000 worth of tickets. But how much are you going to spend to save your kids, right?
yeah.
So we got all of our passports, we got all of our this, we got all of our that, our overnight bags, and we at the I figured once I could get them back in America, possession is 9/10 of the law. I could come back to Sweden and turn it into an international incident if they want to arrest me, because I had Amazon behind me. And I had the Marine Corps behind me. Like it turns into a thing where allegedly I could be like, "Yo, State Department, I need your help." And the State Department the State Department was absolutely useless. They were like not interested in getting involved at all. And apparently kind of under the Obama administration, this was the first couple of years of the Trump administration, but the very Obama oriented, like the Hillary Clinton, Obama type of State Department just did not step on local toes to save Americans. It's not like the Trump, America first type of thing. So we get up at like 4 in the morning. We take bus tickets down so that we didn't have to swipe our cards, like literally like debit cards, bus tickets down to the main train station, T Centralen in Stockholm. We get a overland train by cash, from Stockholm down to Copenhagen. And then we go into the airport. And I swear to God, dude, we had put every single passport out and had them all, and I had them in my like European man bag. What I didn't realize is I had a passport that had expired, and so I had gotten another one, but I got the original one back. How they put the two holes in it. I don't know if I was anxious. I don't know what it was, but we missed it. All I saw was 6 passports. We're good. We didn't have my oldest son, Silas's passport. Wasn't with us. So I have to send Janet with the other 3 kids over to Las Vegas. I called my buddy back where our house was, like, buddy, can you please, please, please go and check through my house and see if you find that passport? He found it on the top of the toilet, like on the toilet tank. Yeah, I don't know if I absolutely put it there. We had showed the kids, this is your passport, you'll need it, blah blah blah. I don't know if, like, one of the kids took it and put it there. I don't know, but we missed it. When you're trying to get out like that, it's easy to miss things, which is why it's crucial to have like a bug out bag. And so I rented a Mercedes, because all the rental cars there are like super European bougie BMWs and Mercedes. And Silas and I had to take him because we couldn't fly him out, and I wasn't going to have wife and kids stay here. I was like, so you guys get out. And we drove about 4 hours back at like 5 miles below the speed limit, because I was not going to get pulled over. I was not going to get flagged on the system because I didn't know what level of surveillance we were under. So we get back, grab the passport, drive all the way back the other 4 hours to Copenhagen, because we weren't going to stay the night in Sweden again, just in case. We get to Copenhagen. Because when you buy like last minute tickets, they're like non-refundable.
Yeah.
I had to buy 2 additional tickets, but this time to Phoenix, Arizona. So Silas and I get on the plane. We fly into London. Janet and I had the same experience. We got from Copenhagen to London, and then we went through the American, because the Americans have TSA set up for every incoming domestic flight to the US. And dude, I'm not a big fan of the TSA, but when we went through and got beat into the TSA, and the guy said, "Welcome home," it was like, it was intense. So in the meantime, we didn't have a car. Sweden hates the internal combustion engine. They really do. Owning a vehicle in Sweden is such a pain in the ass. So every time we wanted to travel up to like the North Pole or Lapland or anything like that, we would rent like a big like Sprinter van and throw all the kids in there and go. So I had my driver's license up. Sweet baby Jay, my wife, has never been great at keeping any of her documents or any of her email passwords or any of her anything up to date ever in any way. That's where I came up with the whole forest fairy concept. She is a forest fairy. It is cruel and unusual that she even has to do modern things. They're mean. She just wants to garden and make tinctures and stuff, like forest witch stuff. Forest fairy. So she gets to the Las Vegas airport, where I had rented like a minivan or something in her name. She gets up there, and her driver's license is expired by like 6 months, and she didn't even notice it. Right. And so she gets up, hands it to the lady with her passport. And she said, the lady looked at it and goes, "Your passport's expired. I'm sorry, your driver's license is expired." Anyway, and she's like, and she says, "Anyway, here's the keys. Get your driver's license fixed." And so it was like, by the grace of God, because you can imagine if we got that one person behind the counter is like, "Nope, your driver's license is expired by 6 hours. Nope." And so she drove down. I told her we were flying into Phoenix. She drove down from Vegas, picked us up at Phoenix, and great family reunion. So we rent a hotel and we just like crash out, because this was exhausting. Dude, the next day, all at once, both Janet and I's phones, bing, 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 ring, 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 bing, 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 ring, ring, ring. And it's our friends from Sweden saying, and our landlord, who was great. We had this great German landlord, who lived in Sweden. And they're like, "Okay, don't know where you are, don't know where you went, do not come back. They have crashed your house. They're searching for you. They're at the school. They're there to pick up your kids. They're asking your friends where you are. Do not come back. Like they came in to seize. And I started getting phone calls and texts from the social services saying, Jake Freeman, where are you? We need to meet with you and your children. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, we're in America. And they're like, well, when are you coming back? We need to see your children. And I'm like, we're never coming back. We are never coming back. And the guy was like, wait, you left Sweden? You're not allowed to do that. And I'm like, suck it, baby. Like, we're in America. You know, like, land of the free, home of the brave. And so we were free. And it was like, holy fuck. We made it. We barely got out of there. We barely, like, within a day, dude. If Silas and I would have stayed the night, it looks like they would have caught us the next day. That's what it looks like to me. And so so now it's like, all right, now what? We're here in America, homeless. So what the hell are we gonna do? And I was like, babe, well, we've always talked about moving to Montana. We got a bunch of those Bezos bucks, in my investment account. The RSUs, the restricted stock units. And this is where all the scandal that Swedes are like, oh, he's a tax evader. Did you see that? Where the Swedish newspaper said that we fled Sweden because I'm a tax cheat and didn't pay my taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. So how it works is the U.S. and Sweden have a tax treaty where you basically pay your taxes to either the IRS or Swedish social services. And so, because I was technically working in Sweden when I divested my restricted stock units while being in America to go and do my buying property, Swedish law says that because I was a Swedish resident working in Sweden, all those taxes, like 60% taxes or something stupid, should have gone to them. But the IRS says if I pay taxes to them, they'll let it go. They're happy. They don't care what Sweden says. I would much rather pay taxes to Daddy Warbucks and not to the socialist child stealing services. So I made that decision, right? With my tax lawyers, because I have great tax lawyers. And so that's where their whole they left, because the tax cheat thing, they made an after the fact incident as the preliminary reason why we fled, because they have to justify the system somehow. The true believers do. So anyway, I found this like 2005, 2001, really nice 38-foot like RV, V10 RV that could technically sleep 6 people, 2 in the back, 2 in the middle, 2 in the other middle. And I was like, babe, we've always talked about living in Montana. Why don't we get an RV, since we don't know where we want to be and we don't want to invest ourselves? So it'd be like being somewhere. And let's drive up from Phoenix up to where my father's buried in Snowflake, Arizona, into New Mexico, into Colorado, down through Utah, back in through Colorado. Because I knew Colorado was going kind of like lefty lib weird at the time. And I was like, man, Colorado sounds great. Like Pueblo's great, but do we really want to? Then, more through Utah, stayed a bit with my mom. She's passed away since, but stayed up through her. And then into Wyoming, into Idaho, into Montana, and ultimately ran into some vehicular trouble about 45 miles north of Billings in the Bull Mountains, where, and if we hadn't been stopped overnight, because our like windshield cracked out, like the bottom of it just like popped out. And on those big flat facing RVs, that's terrible. Yeah. Well, so a guy came in and fixed it, but we were there for like 3 days. So I get on Craigslist again and I'm looking at properties, and there's this dude trying to sell like, it was like 27 acres of land for like $56,000 with a well already on it. And so I widened the search. Property was already going up. And I couldn't find, this was like a third of the price of any other property I could locate. And I was like, babe, look, we're not going to find any other property. It's not our favorite area of Montana. We like the western side, in terms of pretty, but if we buy this property and then develop it, it's 45 miles from an international airport, Montana's biggest city. We can get a huge bang for our buck by holding on to this property. and then put it into a trust and hold on to it anyway. We don't even need to resell it. So I
Yeah.
went and bought the property cash. We utilized the well. We built a house. We lived in the freaking RV for 2 years, dude, while we're building. If you've ever had 2 adults and 4 kids living in an RV in a Montana winter, wild, not for the weak of heart. But I, taught myself trades. I realized, but at the time it was like machine learning, is what we were all talking about. It's, machine learning is graduated largely to large language model AI. Between machine learning and Team India, whatever role I was doing for Amazon, it was going to be redundant. Like I was never
Mm.
going to keep up with the computers and Team India. So I was like, man, the boomers are getting out of the trades, and their handoff sucks. Boomers handoffs always suck, whether it be financials or trades. So we went through the hard work of learning how to be tradesmen. In the meantime, I was cranking out my second master's as a marriage and family therapist, which I just got fully licensed in last Friday after being after being an associate license for whoever the hell knows how long. So now I'm a fully licensed marriage and family therapist, fully licensed tradesman, and licensed contractor, and I've got my other masters in organizational leadership and human resources management. So yeah, man, I'm just making my own way because this is America, baby, and they can't take your kids for it.
Man, that is such a fascinating, awesome story. I enjoy hearing like parts of the story I hadn't heard before and filling in details of just who you are, where you come from. I love all that. Um, can you tell me a little bit about, gosh, this was a couple months ago. You went super viral for telling this story on X.
Dude, I'm always virile, but it's so I don't know, man. I was just sitting there. I've got the X. I'm trying to make it a bit more professional because God knows it's the Scotch Irish. I love fighting with retards all the time. And so I was like, man, I need to start making this more professional. And so I'm like trying to tell like some of my expertise within organizational development and expertise from like military days and stuff like that, things I've always made money on. And I've got this great large language model. You know that I'm kind of a guru at how to make AIs do good things, whether it
Oh
be
yeah.
uh pictorial representations or just giving you great non sycophantic results and analyses. And so I'm talking to this AI I have trained. I'm like, hey, let me tell you my life story. And so I just start pounding it with, Afghanistan, Philippines, da, 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 da. And I get to the Sweden part, and it's like, I was like, I've told you the Sweden part thing, right? And it's like, no, you've never told me the Sweden part. And so I say, well, here's kind of in a nutshell what happened in Sweden. And it said, okay, this is the one. You need to flesh this one out and put it out there. And so I was like, yeah, well, you know what? Probably because yeah, I don't know where they are. I keep a bunch of, there you go. I keep a bunch of leather bound journals that I write in
Ah,
anyway. But it's
yeah.
like, the issue with leather bound journals is that they just stay on your shelf and they can be destroyed in a house fire or a thief or when, Soviet social services come to steal your kids and want to
Where
burn all
moth
the
and
evidence.
rust can destroy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If they want to put you in the gulag and just, erase you for the good of the people. So I was like, I'm trying to kind of like online journal, not online, but cloud. I'm trying to get some of my life stories and experiences in there anyway. And I was like, you know what? It's probably about time that I document everything that happened in that whole Sweden experience. It's been about 5 years. Well, because that's one of the other things, man. When I when I came back to the States and I started I didn't have Twitter at the time really. It was on Facebook. And dude, if I had Twitter, if I had been posting this stuff on Twitter, I would have gotten banned anyway, right? At the time before our beloved Elon Musk bought it. But I went on Facebook, and I started telling the story. And a lot of my American friends were like, holy crap, I had no idea. I thought Sweden was like this nice, happy, utopian, sweet place that nothing like that would ever happen. That was like on the libertarian conservative side. But then I had quite a few liberal leftist friends who heard and read my whole account and would come back with, again, the Stepford wife response of, isn't it great that they have a system that protects children? Like, and it's like, whoa, dude. And this was before COVID. And then COVID happens. And these same people are like, if you don't have a vaccine passport, you should starve to death. And it's like, whoa, dude, what are you? You're a monster. You're an animal. So I really, really learned that there's a subset of our local population that's pod people, man. They're pod people. And so uh I don't know. I don't think I was like emotionally ready to put the story out and find out just how many of my friends were actually shitty people. Like, and then it was like, after the whole COVID thing, uh, and then after this last several years of political America, it's like, you know what? I absolutely want to know who wants me in a camp. I absolutely want to know who thinks that I should be fired for the wrong thing, And so I decided I just made a post on Twitter. Like, I'm thinking it's about time to tell the story of blah, 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 what happened. And I posted it and I went to sleep and I woke up the next morning and there was like 700,000 people had interacted with it, and Elon Musk had come on and wrote like, this is crazy. And I'm like, oh, well, this is something. And then it went up to like 1.7 million over the next day. And I'm like, okay, well, apparently there's an appetite for this, so I'm going to write a Substack. So I did. I made like $350 off it from Elon bucks off of X.
Nice.
Got monetized on there, so that was cool. And now I'm just going through, part one, part two, part three. Part four is going to be kind of the latter half of what we talked about with the olive finger teacher, and then the escape, and then some cultural analysis. It's probably going to take me about two more essays.
You've had two and two more to go.
I've got three, and I think I've got two more to go.
Okay, gotcha.
Because
number three is coming out in a week.
My inbox, there's a lot of people that are living in Sweden or have lived in Sweden that had very similar experiences that actually got their kids taken away. I don't know if I don't know if it was the hand of God. I don't know if it was just my, Marine Corps ability for threat assessment. My corporate background was pretty administrative and legalistic. So I kind of like, when a process goes to a certain point, I kind of know what permutations it could possibly go. And, 2 out of the 3 permutations didn't look great. And so getting a lawyer involved and that making it even worse. And that's the other funny thing. Swedes are telling me, oh, well, the mistake you made was hiring a lawyer. You should have never hired a lawyer. That makes you so guilty. And as an American, that's like, that's bad. That's so evil. Like, anyway, man, I don't know if I
is that a Kafka trap? Is that a Kafka trap?
Yeah,
like,
it is. It really is.
Defending yourself makes you
blah 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 blah. It's
defending yourself makes you guilty.
Dude, it's right out of this thing.
Yes, yeah.
It's right out of this thing.
Yeah.
It's like and reading through guys like him and others like Lifton, it's like this 1984 stuff. It's like, guys, documenting or writing about this evil shit isn't an instruction manual. It's supposed to be a warning. So why are you taking it as an instruction manual? Like
when the Soviets and Mao's China started doing this stuff, we didn't have a ton of literature on it, but like we do now. Like everybody knows about this. Like, how are they still getting away with it?
Well, and that's look, you know me, always fair-minded, always never controversial. I always see both sides. They as I was kind of going through this thing in Sweden, and I would sit my very well-traveled Swedish or Finnish or Danish, Norwegian colleagues, I would be like, hey guys, like, I don't want to like dump on you, but here's what's going on. I don't understand it. Like, there's something happening here. I'm missing it. I don't understand what's going on. And they explained that Sweden did really try to run kind of a neutral thing during the Cold War, US versus Soviet. And there was always a contingent of kind of Marxist leftoids that wanted to be more on the pro-Soviet Union side, but then there was the other one that wanted to be the pro-American side. This is why you get like uh the Swedish pop culture that's very capitalistic, with great businesses coming out,
Yeah.
but at the same time you walk through basically every medium to largish size city in Sweden, and you see like Soviet block buildings, like the apartments. No, look them up. They're like
Concrete.
Soviet Union style brutal architecture. And it's like, so how did you have this capitalist freedom current, with this Soviet, obviously like Soviet sensitive or Soviet sympathetic sort of thing? Well, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it effectively collapsed whatever hardcore pro-Soviet Marxist political movements in Sweden, because the gig was up, like it failed, like they lost. And the way my Swedish guys explained it to me is that a lot of the really pro-communist, pro-Marxist true believers went into two places. They went into the environmentalist movement, the green movement,
Makes sense.
or they went into social services, because one of the things that Oke Dun, he's a researcher that he died a few years ago, but he wrote a book called The Swedish Mentality, that if you really want to understand a lot of this stuff, you got to read that. He says that the Swedish Marxists really bought into the idea that they could socially engineer the perfect person. They called it the new Swedish man, and
It's
really
very
popular
Marxist.
during the '60s. And this is why Sweden weaponized its social services so much, to where they could seize children quickly for anything, because the thought was you wanted to be able to have the state was the intermediary between all humans and other humans. So the state was the intermediary between the parent and the child, the neighbor and the neighbor, the spouses. And so you can't have a relationship in Sweden without there being very significant mechanisms of the state to jockey it for you. And so and again, I knew nothing of this when we moved over there, even though I was pretty Swedish, trained. You find things out living in the deep and dark of any country, but me as an American white heterosexual capitalist Marine, I was like enemy number one for whatever Marxist adjacent or Marxist sympathetic types within their social services system. Like I'm the devil, boogie boogie. Anyway,
So, yeah, I'll give you one more. This will be our last. We've been going a while now. This will be our last question. But what you're describing, it seems like a perfect like psychological thriller, where it seems like this perfect utopia. Everybody's really sanitized. You got the Stepford Wife mentality, but there's this other thing lurking under the surface. The social services are like being weaponized in ways that might look kind on the surface, but are actually like horrific. You've got this like cluster B SSRI liberal white woman taking over things. You talk about the longhouse. Like, what can we learn here as Americans from your experience about what's going on here at home?
all right. Um, believe what you're seeing. Like there's a video going around of some attractive looking white chick in gym wear, uh going after ICE for arresting a guy, like a illegal that is wanted for rape charges. And this woman is uh chasing after and yelling at ICE for kidnapping innocent people off the street. Here this woman literally protecting and defending an accused like rapist, that like they've got enough information to have a warrant and pluck him off the street, and she's trying to protect and free him. Similar thing in Sweden, where uh with the Islamic, no, I won't even say Islamic, I will say Islamist, like the political movement Islamists and political movement like African Muslims where they literally hate anything that's not Islamic. There was a case recently where a Swedish girl was raped, and the judge uh, ruled against deporting him because she said the rape didn't even last very long. The rape didn't last long enough to justify deporting him. It's this, as our boy Gad Saad talks about, it's this inversion of empathy. It's this mothering instinct gone psychotic, where like they would see a family like ours and say, we need to crush this because uh it's everything we hate. It's this old traditionalist conservative patriarchal structure that we've taught ourselves to loathe, while we are allowing the very people that are cutting our faces off and raping us in the forest and throwing acid on us, but they're just poor baby sweets. They're poor marginalized brown people that need to be protected from people like this Jake guy and his family. It's we see that, like, there's an out of controlness that is really difficult to understand. You know, our boy Slocum and others, Haltigan, will call it uh, cluster B personality disorder at a social level, like
Mm,
at a massive
yeah.
national level. Why is it? I don't know. Maybe it is the widespread SSRIs. Maybe it is the that things are too posh, too opulent, and people will find something to fight for and against. Always, you'll never take that drive out of us, glorious primates. And so, uh, my uh advice and what I am doing is call it out in all ways directly for what it is, and then mitigate it as much as possible by you've got to be involved politically, you've got to be involved socially, you've got to have at least tabs on your local, community or county councils or school councils. uh for too long we've allowed these nutty people, both men and women, to, it's my right to have freedom of speech. Cool. But you're going to hear from me on it too. And I am going to say true things. Like when I see something happening, I will say it as it is. Like the transgender movement right now, what's causing it to collapse is simply people's ability to say the truth about it. Like to say, well, what if the studies that we're seeing out of like Denmark and not Denmark, but Holland and Finland, for instance, is that if you treat gender dysphoria with and for autism for a long period of time, that person will revert in most cases to one of the binaries. And so all this follow on transgender, gender affirming nonsense is actually nonsense. It's politically driven nonsense. And there's a long time where you could have hell to pay for saying something that the science literally is saying. And I don't mean like the science, TM, like was pushed during COVID. I mean actual uh solid statistically driven science, which we should all support. So you've got to keep pushing back, because the problem with the crazy people is they will never have enough inner peace to stop. And if
Mm,
you stop because you're comfortable, and I think this is something that happened to the boomer generation, everything was good, extremely good all throughout the 90s and the middle 2000s. 9/11 was a big, we obviously know that there was some shenanigans going on with the Patriot Act after that to surveil the Americans and the Europeans. But you cannot sit on your haunches and expect that wicked, evil, or damaged people won't try to destroy a good thing. They won't try to make it into a utopia that's actually hell on earth.
mm. Jake Freeman, thank you so much for your time, your story. I hope this reaches a lot of people and wakes some people up.
Let's make some video clips and sound clips and things, dude.
Let's do it.